we're about to make a start. If we can have your attention, please. Welcome to this meeting of the Babergh Planning Committee. I will now ask the Governance Officer to read out the domestic arrangements and the fire regulations. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure that your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptop is also switched to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. Fire safety arrangements. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is on Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at the end of each floor. Do not enter the atrium, the ground floor area and walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs and not the lifts, and please do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Area Planning Manager Mark Russell, Legal Advisor Ian Dupre, 2 case officers Bradley and Jasmine, and Alicia you've met. Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Margaret Mabry and Councillor Peter Beer, and we have Councillor Paul Clover substituting for Councillor Beer this morning.
And Councillor Carter?
Councillor Carter is on her way, but she's advised that she will be about 10 minutes late, so she should arrive a bit later.
Thank you very much. To receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest and other registrable and non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare? Councillor Register.
Yes, I have to declare that I'm a member of Bellevue Action Group, which was a campaigning group for Bellevue Park, but we never considered this planning application or commented on it as a group. And also I was present when Sudbury Town Council Planning, Highways and Development Committee considered this planning application, but I have no pecuniary interest.
Let's just switch on. That's like Councillor Register spoke to me before the meeting. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. That's a non-registrable interest that does not affect the councillor's right and ability to vote on, speak on this matter.
Councillor Grandin, do you have an interest?
I don't think I need to state this, but just to be clear, I know the owner of Bellevue House, so I don't think it's anything. I've got no pecuniary interest. Great, thank you. At least I've mentioned it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I was Cabinet Member for the Economic Development Team early on in the Bellevue scheme, a part of which was the proposed cafe, but this is slightly different design, etc., but I just want to declare that.
Thank you. Declarations of lobbying? No. Declarations of personal site visits? I suppose it's a difficult one not to personally site visit in Sudbury. No? All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of December. I refer the members to the minutes as published in the table papers. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes?
All I'll say is they're quite brief, and I'm not sure they actually give a very detailed review of the meeting, but if everyone's happy with them, I can see no issue, and I'm happy to propose they are accepted as they're written.
Thank you. I have a proposer. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Osborne, thank you. conduct a vote?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That makes 8 votes for and 1 abstention. So those are carried.
Carried, thank you. I will sign them in a moment. Receive notification of petitions. Do we have any?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections. I hand over to Mark and Jasmine. Perhaps you'd like to.
Thank you, Chair. We have a request from Councillor Derek Davis for a site visit relating to application DC 2304109, the former Ganges site at Shotley. Jasmine is here to explain.
Has that skipped a slide? Yeah, it was, I think, yeah. Oh, I didn't realise that was there. Right. Okay, perfect. So the application is a Section 73 application which seeks to vary previously approved plans at the former HMS Ganges site in Shotley Gate. The application is unlikely to come to committee for determination until March, probably at the earliest, just for background. So in terms of planning history on the site, I think this is probably quite an important thing to touch on. Some members may remember going out on site a number of years ago. The original application that this seeks to vary is actually from 2015. In terms of the changes on the site is actually now currently under construction. There are some units that have been occupied. There's been a roundabout that's put in, and the swimming pool has actually now been listed as well. So there's some of the kind of more recent contextual changes. So a number of changes are actually proposed under this application, which are listed on the screen. I'll give you a minute just to kind of run through those. It's quite extensive, as you can see. There is an uplift in the number of dwellings on site, so an increase of 18. We've got some changes in some of the existing buildings in terms of their uses. This is to improve some of the viability issues on the site. There are, as you can see, a range of different various bits and pieces, including alteration to internal road layout as well, removing connections to King Edward Fifth Drive, and basically to provide emergency vehicle access as well. Is everyone happy for me to move on, or do you still need
Everybody
a minute?
read them? Yes, Des.
Yep. So this is the site location plan. As you can see, there are a number of existing buildings within the site, most of which are, well, either there to be demolished or kind of repurposed and converted. And then these are the site plans. So we've got one that just kind of shows the ground floor areas, and then one that's the roof plan, but hopefully between the two it's quite clear. So in terms of the requested site visit, the site visit's been requested on the basis that the site remains controversial since it gained planning permission in 2015. We've had a number of objections coming in. It's an important strategic site in Babergh. There's a benefit for members to see existing buildings which have been referred to extensively by Historic England and the Council's heritage team, because the site does fall wholly within the conservation area, and a number of buildings, as I mentioned, are listed as well. This is basically a chance to see the site as a whole and in perspective, to understand the difficulties with viability and the surrounding road network, which are two of the kind of key elements driving this forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Holt, we'll kick off.
So the last map of the two plans, were they the same? You said one was ground floor, one was second.
So one is
Or
the
are they
roof
the
plan.
differences that are proposed in the amendment?
That's the amended proposed site plan, but the two that were shown, one was just kind of the ground floor, one's a roof plan.
So that was what is being proposed with the amendment, but how different is that to what the original plan was?
In terms of layout changes, I can certainly try and find one. See if I can. This might take me a little bit of time, so I don't know if there are any other questions, and I'll come back to it.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. It's possible that I might be saying something similar to my colleague, in that if we visit, will we be shown the sort of differences? Because I was one of the original 2015 people who went on the original site visit. Will we be shown the difference between what was then proposed and what is now proposed, sort of thing, not just what is now proposed?
Yeah, we can certainly have a kind of pack for members that shows the kind of difference in plans. That's not a problem. I think that's fairly routine with a lot of the site visits.
And walk around and show.
Yes.
Otherwise,
yes.
if we're just showing a pack, then we might as well do it here.
Yes, yeah. No, in terms of, as I say, the development, the site is an active construction site at the minute. So it's likely that the developer will be able to kind of guide some of the, I suppose what has specifically changed and show and kind of point out the specific changes. But obviously, as per the earlier slide, there's quite a lot. So some of it's a lot more minor than some of the other bits, but some of it's fairly fundamental in terms of, obviously they've now had a listing been put on the buildings, so some of the changes internally as well are things that will come out, as well as actually external layout changes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got one. When's this likely to come to committee?
I would suspect probably March time.
Early or late? I'm going to push you there because...
I'll say late.
Okay. It gives us more time and better weather to get out on a site visit. Well, I was going to say we can bundle you all into a coach and take you out this morning. That'll sober you all up. Thank you. Any more questions? No? And then, can I have a proposer or a seconder?
Because he was the one that called it in, I assume, so it would be nice to hear from the ward members to...
Unfortunately, there isn't anything in the Constitution that allows him to speak at this time. I think if you've got a question for him, I might be able to persuade him to answer the question.
Councillor Davis, why did you call it in?
Thank you. Try the other one. No?
Oh, this one's come on. So I pressed that button and this one came on. So,
Yeah.
the reason I called it in, Councillor Holt, is, as the officer has very eloquently put, it is a major strategic site for Babergh, and I think many of the councillors have not visited this site, especially with the new application coming in. There's a lot that you will find interesting and useful. As has been pointed out, it is slightly different to the original application. The important thing, I think, as well, is for you to be able to see on site, and I've been on the site recently, you will be able to walk around some of the buildings that are affected by heritage. Those listed buildings, you will be able to see the state of disrepair or otherwise, and just to get a general feeling for the Spine Road, for where the retail unit's going to be, and just everything actually on site. It is a hugely important site, and it will benefit you enormously when it comes to listening to the application in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Grandin.
Can I ask, is it all one application? So there was a big long list there of aspects. So if we felt comfortable with some aspects but not with others, would we have to approve the whole lot? You know, so is it all one application, or you know, can you tell me how it will work, please?
So in terms of, obviously this is just for the site visit at the minute, but in terms of the application itself, it is a case of, obviously you have to look at the whole application as a whole. We're not picking out specific parts. That may be something that members debate and decide that there are certain things they're happy with and certain things they're not happy with when it comes to planning committee, but for the time being we're just looking at a potential site visit.
I think I agree with Jasmine's quite right, and it is essentially an all or nothing thing when in committee you make your final decision. It's split. Planning inspectors sometimes make split decisions, as we know, but we committees very rarely do, and it raises legal issues.
Thank you.
Any more comments, questions from anyone? Councillor Holt?
We've got the picture.
I've been trying to find it.
Okay, while we're waiting, we'll direct the questions to Mark. Is there another planning application in Shotley that might benefit from a site visit at the same time?
There is another application at the moment for, I think it's, and again, Jasmine will know this, she's the case officer, I think. Could you explain? I think it's 11 units, isn't it?
Yes, so there is another application to the south of this site, which is along the Shotley Marina. That is again a section 73, but all they are seeking to do is relocate 10 of the units elsewhere in the site.
Can I ask Councillor Davis whether there's any significance of trying to visit that, or is that just straightforward?
It is, as the officer says, it's pretty straightforward. You will be able to see, if you have the site visit, when you go down to the bottom part of the Ganges site, you will be able to see where it connects up to the marina side. But I don't think you would gain anything more by visiting the marina, if you like, additionally, because you'll be able to see it from the Ganges site anyway.
It's just if we're going, I want to try and make the best use of that time.
Yeah, because, as Jasmine says, it's a relocation of the houses away from a sensitive landmark, which has been asked for by English Heritage, so it's that. So, and again, you'll be able to see it from the Ganges side. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, have you got your picture yet?
I'm minded to say no. I don't see enough detail in front of us today to warrant us going out on site. If there was an officer report with a lot more detail, with officer recommendations and also heritage reports as to whether these buildings are going to be impacted or whatever, then I would possibly review that decision. But on what I'm seeing today, I don't see that what I'm presented with warrants a site visit. If down the line the more details come forward, then I can see possibly it might warrant it. But as it's being presented today, I don't see a site visit is going to do anything for me to make a decision on the information that's been presented to me today. So I would propose that we do not go on a site visit at this time.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Osborne, thank you. Do you want to speak, or you most probably one of the originals?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I was. And I think it was 3 visits I've had there, so I agree with Councillor Holt. There's no reason, as far as I can see, of actually having the problem of driving down there, if there is a problem. But, yeah, I agree there's enough there for us to, as Councillor Holt has said, if there was more sort of detailed stuff from the officer and no reflection on what she's been saying, yeah, I would tend to have another visit, but as far as I can see, I think there's enough information there. Thank you.
Park that for a moment. Councillor Grandin, you want to comment or ask another question?
Sorry, I disagree with my colleagues. I think there's so much there, and it's such an important strategic site. I attended in 2015. I can't remember whether I went again. But I think we do need a site inspection.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, you want to make...
Well, no, obviously...
Sorry.
Oh,
Wrong Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it's the female one this time.
Don't be too keen, Derek.
Yeah, speaking as a new councillor and just what I've heard on this particular site, I would welcome a site visit because I've not seen it, and it is a big site. It is contentious, and we had another application on Shockley not that long ago, which dredged up some objections that I suspect will be applied to any further objections for the Ganges one. Just from my personal perspective, I would like to see it. And the other two are a bit more experienced than me, and they've already seen it, but I would welcome it. Can we do a partial site visit?
I'm trying to get you to do 2 or 3 while you're there, but any other comments before we take a vote on Councillor Wyman?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with my colleague. I'd like to see it. I mean, I think there's a range of new councillors that really haven't seen the site generally anyway, so I think that would help us to have some real perspective on the overall situation.
Do you think you've been given sufficient information now to...
Sorry, Chair. I think it'd be really useful also to have some further information prior to the site visit, so we can contextualise the whole process.
Thank you. Councillor Holt?
Just to clarify, I have not been to Ganges site before.
I think there's only 2 of you that have. That's Catherine and Adrian. And even I haven't been there. Well, not to look at a planning application. Okay, so there's a proposal on the table. I suppose we can take a vote by hand, or you want electronically? Electronically, we have a vote, well, proposed by Councillor Holt and seconded by Councillor Osborne, that we don't have a site visit, so we've got to have a formal vote on that. Come on.
A yes vote is a vote for not having a site visit then?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. So that makes 3 votes for the proposal and 6 votes against.
Okay.
So that is lost.
So that's lost. Now, can I have a proposal? Can I now have a proposal for a site visit? Councillor Davis, seconder, Councillor Grandin. Anybody want to make any more comments before we have another vote? No. Sorry?
Is there a date in mind, Mr. Chairman?
I would like to suggest it needs to be as close as it can be to when the planning application comes to here. Because, as I understand it, it's an ongoing site. So we could go tomorrow and there could be a complete change by the end of March when this might come to us. So I think we'd have to be a little bit fluid. I hate to say this to because it caused problems for Mark, a little bit fluid in our approach to this one. And it might be that it has to be done not at a day's notice, but relatively short notice sort of situation, when we know that the application has been submitted. Okay. Councillor Clover.
Also, wouldn't you want to tie it into the site visit for shortly the 11 units there?
Well, from what I can hear, that would only be incidental at this particular stage.
Sure.
But it can be done at the same time, yeah. Councillor Hope.
Just picking up on what you said, Chair, I think the later the better, the more detail that's available to members when they visit is the key, because what we've seen today is just headlines and there's no meat on the bone on them.
Okay, so Jasmine, you're very much in the situation where you'll keep me and the other members of the committee appraised of its progress and when it might come to us?
Yes, yeah, and I think possibly if members would like a rough indication, possibly sometime early March, I would say.
For the site visit, either side of the planning. We have two planning committees penciled in for March. So we want it between them?
Yeah,
that would most probably be a rough estimate at this particular time.
Chair, if we're looking at bringing this late March, obviously that might change. Our last committee in March is the 20th. Usually we do, if this goes through, usually we do a site visit the week before the committee where it's being considered, so it would likely be the 13th if we're working to those dates. But I'll work alongside Mark and Jasmine to get that timetabled, and I'll try and let members know as far in advance as possible should this go through. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. Are there any more comments to be made before we go to this vote? No, so let's make it plain. You are voting for a site visit if you vote for this motion.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress for you. Thank you, Chair. That makes 6 votes for the proposal and 3 votes against. That site visit will be put in motion.
That's fast. Okay, so we'll be having a site visit in, sounds like, the middle to later part of March. So don't book any more holidays from March. Thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Mark. We'll now move on to the planning applications, if you're all okay, no problems. Right.
Excuse me, Chair, fortunately we now have Councillor Carter with us. Can we just check that the Councillor doesn't have any declarations that would have been made at the beginning of the declaration?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I feel I should declare that I'm a town and county councillor for Sudbury, where Bellevue is.
Bellevue comes under your county?
It does, county and town, yeah.
But there's no pecuniary interest?
No.
Thank you. Moving on then, establish that to DC 2305-003 Bellevue Newton Road, Sudbury, Suffolk. I will just move straight to Bradley and ask him to introduce the application to the committee. All yours, Brad.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The application you're being asked to consider this morning is a full application for the erection of a new cafe building and replacement toilets at Bellevue Park in Sudbury, and an associated outside seating area to serve the cafe. This slide, this slide shows the site. It's an aerial view, which, for context, this is the main area of Bellevue Park. You can see here. The building with the red dot on top of it is Bellevue House. And another notable feature when you visit the park is the site of the former open-air swimming pool. The application site we're talking about is here. The other feature you will note from the aerial photograph is the amount of established trees on site, which obviously is a valuable feature. This is the site location plan with the site edge red. The other thing you'll note from the area you're being considered today, that includes the area for the site of the proposed building, but also includes the existing WCs, which are proposed to be demolished as part of this proposal. This constraints map shows the location site in relation to Sudbury's conservation area and also the listed buildings. The site itself, as you will note, is not adjacent, but the park obviously is. If you've had the benefit of walking through the park, you'll have noted the topography of the site. And in terms of the position of the site in relation to the conservation area, we're comfortable as officers that the actual site itself doesn't impact on the character of the conservation area, but admittedly the wider Bellevue Park is adjacent. The building, Bellevue House itself, is locally listed. It's not got a statutory list, but it's on the local list for Sudbury. This is the red line site, which basically shows the footprint of the building that's being proposed. And again, just to quickly point out, the toilet block immediately adjacent. The blue line there shows the extent of land that is under the ownership or control of the council. This is the proposed plans and elevations of the building. As you can see, it's a contemporary building. It's a sectional construction, so a lot of the construction will take place off-site and the final construction take place on-site. The building itself will sit on the existing hard standing area, which is in the park already. And in terms of the materials, it's got a steel wall, but it's clad steel walls, but it's clad with timber, and the windows and doors are aluminium, and it's got a flat roof as well, as you note. This is a larger plan of the proposed floor area of the building. It can fundamentally be split into three areas. What you have in this area here, if you can see my cursor, is the public area, which is the cafe area with obviously associated seating. The L-shaped part of the building you can see there is the kitchen and the servery facing onto the cafe area. And then this last portion of the building is the replacement WC facilities to serve the park. And you'll see that it's 4 WCs there, and there's also a larger DDA compliant toilet facility and also changing place facility within that particular part of the building. These are some CGI views of the proposed building. As you can see again, just to emphasise its contemporary appearance, which I've discussed in the report. That's the rear, that's facing south onto the boundary. That's the entrances to the new WCs. And that's the flat roof. That doesn't show the PV that would be secured by condition to be added to the building as part of the overall sustainable construction approach that's been taken. I'll finish off with some photographs. This is the building that's to be replaced, to be demolished, and as I've said in my report, it's important to note that the land that sits on will actually be returned back to parkland. So in terms of the MPPF advice about loss of parkland, we're content that this approach meets the requirements of the NPPF. You can see the established tree immediately to the south, and if I show you the next slide, that hard standing you see there will remain. There's no proposals to excavate, so therefore the actual tree roots that may project under that area will be undisturbed. It will sit on top. The building will sit on top. This is the remainder of the hard standing area where the building would sit on, and the outdoor seating area which would relate to the building would be provided on the remainder of the hard standing that you see there. This is a distance view of the overall site for the proposal, so the building we're talking about will sit approximately in this location. In terms of an overall development, in planning terms, as I said in the report, we are comfortable with the approach that's taken, the architectural approach, and the fact that it's providing replacement toilet facilities, which I understand are subject to repeated vandalism, and also a cafe facility which doesn't exist in the park at the moment in the form proposed. They're positives which meet with the aspirations, I think, of the JLP policies in relation to this particular sort of development. So on that basis, a positive recommendation is made to committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer, please? Hang on, lights. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you mentioned vandalism, and that was one of my big concerns on reading the report. Vandalism of the loos, in particular the Changing Places facility, and also graffiti and that kind of thing on the outside of the building. Can you tell me how these things, how vandalism has been prevented in the design of these buildings, please?
Well, I can't sit here and say that the building wouldn't be vandalised, the new building, in the same way as any other structure may be vandalised within the park, unfortunately. And I'm not going to come up with a trite answer and say it's not really a planning issue, but if it's an issue of being maintained properly, my colleagues in the public realm team will have that responsibility. And there are elements within the building, such as lighting, which one would hope would be able to restrict vandalism. And obviously the building itself, rather than standalone toilets, which is the case at the moment, is associated with an area that would be publicly accessible for a lot of the time whilst the toilets are being used. So that in itself may act as a way of trying to stop that. But I can't, as I say, I can't actually promise there won't be vandalism in this particular case.
Yeah, because I know there is a lot of vandalism in this park. So are the materials that are being used for the outside of the building of the type that you can't do graffiti on them? I know there are materials that can be used for such facilities that are specially, made so that they are less likely to be graffiti. They're not graffiti proof, but they are less likely to enable graffiti to be done easily, which, just looks ugly, doesn't it, and would cause a lot of work for our teams. So are the materials used of the type that makes graffiti difficult to do?
The material that's proposed at this stage is timber.
Yes,
the treatment of the timber hasn't been addressed or conditioned in the application. You're right in terms of the treatment. I think that if members felt it was appropriate in terms of the colour, the final finish, and the use of the material applied to the timber itself in order to be easier to clean, for example. I think that that's something that could be conditioned as part of the overall approval, but we haven't got that detail at this stage.
So, Chair, may we...
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, of course.
We have a representative of BGC, Lee Carvel, here as the agent. Perhaps we'd be better off asking him some of these questions
yes.
when we get round to his turn in a little while.
Okay,
if you're happy with that.
And
then we can see whether you need anything more.
Yes, thank you, I'd be happy with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Holt.
In the, I think it's slide 7, that there are no internal toilets for staff?
No.
Is that a deliberate, obviously it's deliberate, but is that a sensible approach so that staff, when working, have to go outside, round to the side of the building to the toilet, or what was the idea behind that?
In truth, Councillor, it's what we've been considered in planning is the floor space that we've been given. In terms of the internal organisation of it, there is no link between the WCs and the cafe itself. So as a customer or working in the cafe, you'd have to walk out a door and go around the side. I haven't been party to the discussions about the internal arrangements in that respect, so I don't know. I don't think it's deemed to be particularly inconvenient for users of the toilets and the cafe to have to do that, but it's not something that we've been asked to consider as part of the planning application.
So what we see in front of us is actually what will be delivered, and that does not include a toilet for staff?
That's correct,
okay.
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
Perhaps yet again you might like to ask that question of Lee Mason. Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is the right question for you. It might be elsewhere. But in terms of costs, previous planning applications have been revised, shall we say, because of the rising costs. How can we secure costs here in terms of the build project?
Well, it's not really, again, it's not really something that's necessarily directly relevant to the consideration of the planning application. I think tangentially, the build cost, as I understand it, of what's proposed now is significantly lower, say, than a traditional build cost structure. But I think that that's probably driven by circumstances up to this point and the amount available to actually produce the building itself. But again, I don't think as a direct planning issue that's relevant. I think we're considering really whether the building as a new structure is appropriate in that setting as a new addition in itself.
Okay, thank you. I mean,
Councillor Clubber, I think yet again these are questions you may be better off asking Lee Carvel. I think many of these things are beyond what a planning officer's remit would be. You agree with me there?
You're right, Chair, and I think particularly the last question, I don't even think that you could ask the applicant if you want, but it's just not a planning consideration.
It's not a planning
cost. If it overruns, then the applicant may have to come back with a different scheme at some point. We just look at the planning merits.
okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Bradley. We may have to come back to you yet because we may not be getting the right answers from where we want them, but we'll try. Okay. Public speakers. We have no town council, no objector, no supporter. We do have Lee Carvel as the agent, acting on behalf of the council. I understand you're not planning to make any presentation, but you're willing to answer questions as and when they arise, and I think that's the time now. Who wants to kick off? Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. Hello, Lee. I had some questions from before regarding the prevention of vandalism, both the external building from graffiti and other similar vandalism, and even gouging as it's wood, people putting their gouging out their initials and that kind of thing. And also, are the loos lockable from the outside so that hopefully when the facility or the park is closed, the prevention of vandalism, because I think the changing place facilities in particular contains quite expensive equipment. Can you tell me what the prevention activities are there, please? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. So essentially, improved security is paramount in the thinking, not just for this element of the park improvements, but the wider programme that's being planned for the park. So in terms of the treatment and the finish, as Bradley's picked up, timber clad is the proposal at this stage. However, we would be more than happy to have a condition on that for the final treatment to be conditioned if the planning authority think that's appropriate. We have also looked at composite materials as well. What we're very keen to make sure is that the durability, the performance and the actual aesthetic of the finish are befitting the park location, which is obviously featured through the pre-application work we've done with the Heritage Officer as well. But we'd be more than happy to clarify that. We haven't really got into that level of detail with the contractor at this time, but we would be more than happy to produce that to the planning authority by way of condition. Other measures, the park itself has had an upgrade in terms of the CCTV coverage recently as part of the town network of CCTV. We would be keen to extend the CCTV coverage as well to improve the security actually at the location, which we will negotiate with the operator. We're actually going out to procure an operator this week, providing we can get a planning consent through. So that's something we will be looking to improve. And in terms of the vandalism, one of the other things we've considered is the actual the solar PV generation, because there is a direct current and potential dangers from people tampering or any vandalism or climbing on the structure itself. So we've actually upgraded the safety of the of the PV system, so that there'll be an automatic cutout if people did climb up, vandalise or tamper with. They're not going to electrocute themselves because of the enhanced kit that we're going to be putting in. So hopefully that does give some reassurance, and obviously the presence of an operator there, the lighting, and the house itself is going to be, the Bellevue house will be converted into 2 residential dwellings that will improve that general monitoring of the park outside of its opening hours as well. So we're hopeful that as a package of improvements, we can improve the safety and the fear of crime and antisocial behaviour at the park. But if someone does want to damage and vandalise, it's quite difficult to stop them, and because there's quite a lot of glazing as well in the cafe to let natural light and ventilation, etc., there will be roller shutters over the glass areas as well, just to make sure that they're not broken.
Did you say there are all the loos are lockable from the outside, and that's quite...
They will be. Public Realm have asked, I think there's a system you can get in place which will basically lock them at a certain time, so before the park closes, that they can be automatically locked. They will be lockable from the outside, and the actual, exactly as you said, because the change in place is such a high specification and with very specific kit in there, the key for that will be retained by the operator of the cafe. So similar to like radar keys have operated historically, where people will get this key and use the toilet and then deliver that back. So we'll make sure that that's in the operator remit for making sure that that's properly controlled and supervised.
Yes, because externally you've got quite a difficult problem, as you said, because you want the aesthetics, but also you've got to prevent the place looking terrible in a few months or years' time. So thank you very much. I feel reassured. Thank you.
Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of, Lee, good morning to you. In terms of the longevity of the timber cladding, can you put a sort of a timeline on that? And can I just interject with a second question as well? In terms of it may well be attractive for some people to climb on top of the roof. If those solar panels were put at a pitched angle, would that not be more of a deterrent? So there's two questions for you there.
Thank you for those questions. So in terms of the longevity, the modular units are actually pretty comparable to traditional builds. So there's a 50, 60 year life expected, and again it depends on the level of treatment that's applied and the maintenance for the facility, which we will ensure is in place as well. The design, we've had to really think about the cost effectiveness. The modules are provided in a bit of obviously a standard type of format, so it's flat roof. We did look at a different design with the traditional build cafe that was originally planned, but cost was very high. The costs that were associated with the groundworks, there was going to need to be quite a lot of invasive retaining structures put in place for a traditional build, which is why it's now moved towards the modular design. As it's proposed, it's a flat roof, and we will look at we'll talk to the operator, the operator and the supplier as well, to make sure that we can get as many reasonable deterrent factors in place as possible to prevent and deter vandalism. But as it stands, it is a flat roof structure with PV installed above.
Thank you. Can I just make the point that I'm not talking about a pitched roof design, I'm just saying that run the panels at a pitch with steel stanchions to support them.
Yes, we can certainly do the actual angle of the PV, and obviously that will be based on optimising the solar generation. We think that we can get around 4,500 kilowatt hours from the PV that we're proposing to install on the roof as well. So again, that will give some good efficiency and sustainability options for the operation of the cafe as well. So yeah, we'll certainly pick that up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Register, you were the next.
Yeah, Lee, related to the PV, do the trees to the south limit the efficiency of the PV, and has that been taken into account in the calculations? And secondly, for the air source heat pump, one issue raised was again to do with potential security, which is it being interfered with by somebody shoving a stick through the grid. I gather there's a cage being recommended around the air source heat pump. Does that reduce the efficiency of the air source heat pump?
Thank you for that. So in terms of the security to prevent the access and tampering with the air source heat pump, we'll look at, there's a few options. There's cage, or there's like a GRP type unit that you can put around it. Again, we want it to be fitting and blend into the setting of the cafe, so we're going to pick that up with the operator. And again, that I think that's been proposed as a condition, that there'll be some suitable containment for the air source heat pump. So we'll make sure that that's in place. We've done some modelling historically on the sun house and the best orientation of the cafe to light and its aspect out towards the house and to the play areas, etc. So that inevitably, because of the trees there will probably be some impact on the overall performance of the PV, but we're going to speak to the operator, the supplier, and make sure we can optimise what we can to get that on there. And we've sort of, again, I think it's going to be conditioned that the PV up to a certain kilowatt peak will be installed on the cafe. So we'll do the best we can. And in terms of the sun, we've looked at the project, how the sun moves through the year. So hopefully we can optimise that. There's not going to be any battery storage either, just to clarify that for this quite small scale development for the park.
Councillor Carterford.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, if that's all right, Lee. Going back to the toilets and the security, I was wondering why you're opting to give the operator the key rather than the radar key, because the radar key system seems to work quite well, and hopefully what will be a thriving cafe, it may be slightly inconvenient for them to be handing out keys. And how would you would you have to show a disabled badge? How would that work? Also, I would be quite interested to know, Councillor Holt mentioned just a few minutes ago about why there was no toilet inside for staff and what led to that decision. And lastly, due to it being a modular build, I suppose for transparency, what is the lifetime on that, and what is the expected maintenance to be able to keep it for as long as possible, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the actual format of we've not completely bottomed out the actual access to the changing places toilet at the moment. We'll get the most flexible and secure option possible, so nothing is really decided in that front yet. So we could choose a radar key or just the optimal way of making sure that the toilet is monitored and that people can have as flexible access as possible. And we're also looking at a couple of formalised blue badge parking bays up at the front area of the park as well, to make sure that can be used as flexibly as possible. So we will be able to clarify that in due course, and we'll speak to public realm team as well, because they'll have a firm view on what's the best monitoring for the changing places toilet and access for it. Toilet, so we did look at internal access to it, but we were quite constrained by the module. They come in a set size, the module, the units that are put down for the cafe and toilet block. We also wanted to make sure that we got 4 toilets, because obviously the toilets that will be installed with the cafe are for the wider park use as well, with demolishing the existing toilet block as well. We did have some comments through from food safety colleagues. It's not a particular issue if people have to leave just to go around the corner to use the toilet. It was just really and it's for Needham Lake Cafe, if any of you know that as well, that's not accessible internally to staff as well. So it was really just, it doesn't appear to be too much of an issue in terms of accessing it, but it was a bit more of a configuration issue in setting that up to be accessible internally. We wanted all of the toilets to be accessible externally as well for security. So the decision was made that it would not be accessible to staff from inside the building, that they would have to use the outdoor route as everyone else will. It's just something that the supplier has configured into the design as well. So this is something that's done elsewhere as well, where staff would access externally. So there's really nothing else I can clarify on that, I'm afraid. And going to back to the longevity, modular build should be comparable to a traditional build in a lot of respects, so 50, 60 years with good maintenance regime. Obviously, public realm team will no longer be maintaining the toilet block that's regularly vandalised and dilapidated. They'll have the new toilets to be able to support. Also, we're looking at what can be done with the cafe operators to keep the day-to-day running and maintenance and supplies of the toilet in good order as well, to make sure that that's, because they're obviously new operator coming in will be benefiting from a brand new facility that will be on there, and it's really important that we keep it in good order. So that will form a bit of a balance between what the operator can do and what public realm team will be doing as well, and we'll make sure everything else is in the normal sort of maintenance recommendations of the supplier as well. There'll be an operation and maintenance manual that come with the finished handed over units, which we will observe, make sure are fully maintained.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Grandon, you had one final question for Lee.
Thank you. Well, 2 very small points. Are there going to be outside tables and chairs? And if so, are they going to be, is it planned that they will be stored internally when the cafe is closed? And my other question is, it looked from, I don't know if this is for planning or for yourself, from the pictures we saw, diagrams we saw, it looked as if there were trees that block the view of this facility from places like Bellevue House, are those trees remaining in place?
Thanks for that. So, first question, there will be some tables and chairs that the operator will be responsible for, where they'll put them immediately outside the vicinity of the cafe. So they will generally be stored inside the premises during closed times. In addition, the Public Realm team are looking at the wider reconfiguration of play and other activities in the park, so there will also be some fixed seating and table improvements over a bit of a longer period, which will not be within the operator control. That will be fixed improved seating, which should connect into the park, but that's not part of this application. That will be later on for Public Realm works to come. So essentially, in the lease agreement with the operator, they will be responsible for both providing and storing the tables and chairs for the cafe. And in terms of the trees, there is, during the year, there's regular cycles of tree maintenance at the park already. What is happening is there's some further sort of crown raising, crown lifting and enabling works to let the actual vehicles come in to actually deposit the units on site when they're installed. So that's being undertaken at the moment actually. So there's nothing there that's actually prohibiting or interfering with the units when they're going to be placed. And also Public Realm have been thinning out some of the hedging, so there is a greater aspect to seeing the park, the Bellevue House from the cafe in the park. So obviously we can't, there's no trees being removed with this application, there's no need for it. But it's just the regular park maintenance by Public Realm is considering opening up some of the sight lines so that they're better access, because one of the things we want with the cafe is that people will have an aspect out to the play area and also to the park. So that's been, some of that's been done already, and further work will be undertaken with that.
Councillor Osborne, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Lee, for your answers to the questions so far. One of the questions was about the heat pump, which came up at our Sudbury Full Council, and that was an area of wanting to make sure that that was secure. So the question that Tim asked, I think, will suffice that one. The other question I've got is that there is a high voltage cable that runs from Cornard Road underneath what was the old swimming pool, and they put a temporary fencing up. I think it was the electricity board. This is a few years ago now, and I would like you to ask Public Realm to have a look at that amount of temporary, well, not scaffolding, but those areas that they put up because a brick wall fell down. So we're talking about 14 years ago, and they still haven't done anything. It is a way in for people because they've removed one section. So any vandalism which in the park is caused during the evenings when the park's locked up, as Councillor Grandin has alluded to, I would like you to ask Public Realm if they can do something about that, because it is a dangerous area for them to come into, plus the fact they will cause problems when they get in the park. Thank you.
Just to clarify, thank you for that, Councillor Osborne. The whole stretch along Cornard Road does need some works. It's a very variable picture across that whole stretch of Cornard Road, different levels. There's some quite decent reinforcement still there, but equally there's bits that are not, so it does need to be tackled. So I'll certainly raise that with Public Realm. And just for some further reassurance, we do have UK PM works, enabling works already on order. We're going to upgrade the electricity supply to 3-phase because the cafe does require it, so that will also give some more flexibility in the park. And we've got an engineer down there, so we've already raised the fact that there was previous temporary works done and potential issues with the cabling there, so they'll be looking at that when they come out on site over the next few weeks.
I believe the cabling that goes under there, because it's high voltage, is 3-phase. So the problem I've got is the section of the temporary fencing that went in, the metal fencing, which has been removed. One section has been removed, and that has given access to anybody, and it's a dangerous way of going in that part. Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I'm not sure who this question would be for. It's about the potential for bats in the existing public toilet block. Looking at the bat survey that was done, only the old garage was actually surveyed. They did an emergence survey of the old garage, but I can't find any evidence that there's been any bat emergence survey done of the toilet block, but I might be missing something. And obviously, because this is going to be demolished, it needs to be considered. Although the preliminary ecological report said that it would be of low roosting potential for bats. I just wondered if that was going to be done.
Lee, is that one that you might take?
We provided work that was undertaken with the previous planning applications for the park entrance work. I think the proposal at the moment is to incorporate wildlife-friendly lighting, etc. But there's nothing that's been done in terms of specifically bat survey beyond that's already been provided with the application. We understand as well that the ecology report, the preliminary ecology report, does mention low potential for bat roosting in that area, and there's also a reference to a badger assessment which we will be undertaking as well before we commence.
Chair, sorry, could I just add for the councillor, one of the recommended conditions is that prior to commencement a further survey for protected species takes place, which was recommended by the ecological consultant. So that would pick up the issue with relation to any bat presence within the existing building.
Councillor Holt.
Sorry, Lee, I've got quite a few things I want to say. Have you got a licensee for the CAF yet? No, we're going out for an operator, starting actually this Friday for a 1 month period, inviting bids and also looking at the potential benefits of having a social value operator in the park to benefit the park community and events and engagement with some of the people that use the park. In the current climate, obviously, with things as they are, it might be difficult to get a licensee, and the last thing we want to see is an empty building with a lovely set of new toilets. It's an economic question there, isn't there, as to whether a licensee will accept running the cafe in the current conditions that we have. What we've tried to do, Councillor Holt, is to put together quite an attractive package which is weighting that social benefit of having a good community interested operator in the park, not just the purely financial gain. So we're hopeful of getting some interesting bids in, with leaving it deliberately quite flexible. What we're also keen to make sure is that elements such as perhaps monitoring the toilets, cleaning the toilets, is not going to be a deterrent to any bidders coming forward. So we've tried to strike that right level, and we will remain flexible during the process of securing an operator. We have had some historic interest in running the cafe in the park as the previous iteration of the work was done. So we're hopeful, but you're right, in the current climate it's going to potentially be quite challenging, so the council will do what it can to make sure we get someone in place to I suppose it opens the question up as to whether the district council and the town council may have to contribute to the operating of the cafe in the long term or short term. If I can move on to something else.
Can I make sure that some of these questions are drifting away a little bit from a planning? It's the planning.
With all due respect, Chair, it's always the case when it's our own application, because I think we've all got our heads in other things as well and considering other things. But I do appreciate your comment. We're here for planning and planning only.
Please, if you would.
One of the other things in the application was the 5-year plan for the park. I know one of the key drivers originally with the cafe was the under-5s play area being moved so it was adjacent to the seating area of the cafe, so that young parents could go in with their children, they could sit at the cafe in decent weather, their children could play in quite clear view. Again, a little bit concerned, the 5-year plan is very open-ended. it mentions the under-5s play area, but it doesn't give any specifics. And again, it's one of those USPs for it, that if you've got the play area adjacent to the cafe, it will encourage young mothers to go in, young parents to go in, grandparents to go in with their children, grandchildren, so that they can sit, enjoy the benefit of the cafe, the benefit of the park. And it's not particularly a key planning issue, but again, it builds to the overall design and concept of the cafe. So is there any guarantees or anything you can give me today that will encourage me to believe that the under-5s play area is one of the key things that is on the public realm team's agenda to get done sooner rather than later?
I hope I can do that. Yeah, we've been consulting with public realm colleagues throughout this whole process, and I can give some reassurance to the committee today that the under-5s play area reconfiguration is the top priority for exactly those reasons. The whole cafe and toilet project has been in response to public feedback and engagement at the park, and one of the key drivers for it was exactly that parents and grandparents and guardians will be able to supervise their children whilst having a coffee or a snack at the cafe, and so public realm are prioritising this as the first significant reconfiguration step that will come forward. I would also just say that the 5-year plan has slipped a little bit in terms of some of the activities on there, because it was obviously a lot has changed with Bellevue Park. The significant Churchill retirement complex has stopped, so there's just been a little bit of reordering. So the under-5s is coming forward as the priority.
Okay. Chair, if I could touch on we've mentioned vandalism and the security of the site. Obviously, you mentioned the Churchill application, and even the current Sudbury Town Council preference would be to open the front of the park. Obviously, that would bring the cafe into a more clearer view of public view. Its location at the moment is, as is the toilet, quite hidden, and is susceptible to vandalism. You've touched on various methods and things you may do to try to mitigate that. And you've mentioned the PV panels on the roof. Will we just put the PV panels on the roof as a tick box, even if they're not efficient enough to actually benefit it? Because Councillor Register rightly mentioned about the shadowing. If they're not going to generate sufficient energy, why do them? Because to me, that is a vandalism waiting to happen, and you'll probably then end up having to secure the roof height with barbed wire or something like that, which we don't want. It needs to be open, it needs to be welcoming. So I'd just like to ensure that you just don't put PV on it just because that's what people want, if it's not efficient and it's going to deliver enough energy for it to warrant to be there, because it will just be another vandalism aspect of the site, unfortunately. We can't get away from the fact currently it suffers extreme vandalism at periods of time. And you touched on CCTV. I'm sure we could relocate, add an additional, I know we struggled to put a camera in the park and get it installed, but I'm sure we could get another camera solely for the cafe, so that I wouldn't have thought it was that difficult, speaking to West Suffolk, to enable them to facilitate that. So that's another thing on there. The old toilet block, you mentioned removing it, it's going back to open space. The awful bit of land behind the fencing, which we've been and seen many a time, I take it there's no plans currently, or is there plans in the 5-year plan to address that? Because again, that's an ugly site that is fenced off, that is derelict behind it, that is not welcoming. And any improvements to that, again, through public realm would be appreciated, but whether you can comment on that.
Okay, so starting with the PV, it's important for the sustainability to have some PV on the roof, and we're actually going to have more on there than is at Needham Lake Cafe. So there was 2 options. One was complete overkill, but this one is proportionate, so I think it's 5.6 kilowatt peak or thereabouts. So we're confident, and because of the technology that's going to be used, they do generate still, even where partially covered. So we've put, so similar to the technology we put on the carports,
where individual panels are obscured. So the whole performance of the whole system is actually much greater than in years gone by because the technology is better. So we believe it's more than a sort of token gesture really, and that will also give some benefit to the operator. Obviously 4,500 of kilowatt potential hours per annum, it equates to about £1,500 potentially of reduced electricity bill, so it's worth doing. CCTV, absolutely, we will look at all options to get full coverage and some internal coverage as well, which is something we do want to discuss with the operator, and obviously we'll pick up with the town network as well, see whether we can get an additional camera. Again, we did it with the carports, we've got CCTV with the carports to prevent and deter vandalism as well, so that seems to be working okay. And what was the last one? Sorry, I forgot the last question was... Oh yeah, sorry, the wider plans to open up the park. So there was a consented planning application for a significant accessible new park entrance more round to Cornard Road. That's not progressing due to cost and because it was reliant on the Churchill deal, so that's not going ahead. We have been in discussion and we do continue to seek to work in partnership with Sudbury Town Council around all opportunities to bring forward a better accessible entrance and to make it much more visible to people visiting the town, because the park is tucked away, it's not greatly signposted, so we're looking at all options there with the town council. However, at the moment it's quite difficult because of the levels difference. Any significant regrading of the site there is going to cost quite a lot of money at the moment, so we're just going to look at what we can do, and also external funding bids, for example, heritage lottery or other options that might help us to bring forward a better park. But temporarily, where the toilets are going to be demolished, it will be put back to hard standing or grass for a temporary time until a fuller solution is found for the park entrance. Just a couple of other things. It's mainly to do with access to the site. I assume during the development it will be from Ingramswell Road, which is quite sufficient to take in. I believe they mentioned in the papers transits would be the type of vehicle that would deliver. I can't see how that's going to deliver in the modules, but I'm sure you can enlighten us on that. And the other thing, you mentioned blue badges, blue badge parking. Where were you thinking of having blue badge parking? So there's actually been a meeting today with the parking manager to look at where the current access is to the old pool site. There's some informal parking, people have been parking there, so we're looking at formalising those into blue badge, maybe 2 or 3 spots there. It's still a little walk down to the cafe and the toilet, but it's the best we can do at the moment until there's a fuller solution for the new entrance. And in terms of servicing the cafe, standard sort of vehicles will access no problem, and for the actual access to install the prefabricated units, we've been on site with the supplier. They've done all the calculations, the swept path from both. They think they can actually get in from Newton Road as well as Ingramswell. They can definitely get in from Ingramswell, so there's no craning or anything of that nature needed to install on the site, so that's good news. And one last thing, Chair, the cafe block, the current one, will it be demolished and removed? And as the licensee, you've obviously had discussion with the person who runs that? We don't see that there'll be a need for 2 outlets in the park. However, there's a leasing effect for the current the cabin up the other end of the park. That's really to be resolved at the moment, and it's going to be down to that operator as well what their plans are. So we'll and they'll have an opportunity to bid if they wish to for the new cafe itself actually. So nothing's off the table at the moment, but we'll try and get the right balance in place for the park.
Thank you. Councillor Clover, you have one question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously the design is there to maximise light into the building, but I'm just wondering, given the discussions about vandalism and also staff and even customers having to walk around to the loos, have you considered the idea of a covered walkway, perhaps extended right the way around the building, so that that would serve 2 things: A, keeping people dry when they went to the loo, but also a deterrent to vandals to try and get up above a cover and then onto the roof.
Yes, again, cost is a factor, unfortunately. So we did look at covered walkways initially and discussed that with Public Realm colleagues, and with the design and the cost of the maximum budget that we've got, we haven't proposed installing covered walkways at this time. There's nothing to potentially deter that from being added on in a future period. But what we've done is to orientate the building so that the toilet block is not. One of the other options was to put it to the back, which we didn't want to have put to the back. So we've really just complied with what Public Realm see as the best fit for the park at this time as well. There'll be some other things like some sail canopies and shading elements that we will want to bring in later on, but that will be a step down the line once the further park reconfiguration works are underway. So we'll keep that under review, but there's no plans to put a covered walkway at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Grandin, you had a quick question?
Yes. Is the cafe planned to be open all year, or core hours? And if it is open any part of the year or only core hours, what will happen about opening and closing the loos?
So the intention is that the cafe will be open all year when the park's open all year, and also ability for evening events and activities, again, which should benefit some of the security issues in the park if it's in use, and also to generate an additional community programme and activities for people using the park. So we're quite keen to do that, and that's something that will go into it was in the operator brief, something we want to work with the operator on. That's something we want to progress, and obviously the park has significant events like Party in the Park. The carnival's been there before, so we want the cafe to be part of that offer in the park as well. So that's what we're looking to do. And in terms of some of the other benefits, we will explore the opportunity of the cafe operator opening the park or locking the park up, but we've got to be a little bit careful not to passport all of the responsibility or the liability for some of this onto the operator, and that would essentially be a bit of a deterrent, we think. So there's discussions to be had in that respect, but the toilets, we want them to be lockable at a set time. The technology's there that they could all be shut when the park shuts by some sort of mechanism. So we'll make sure that that's considered, and with Public Realm and the supplier of the units as well.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Holt, final question I have.
Well, it's no question, Chair. It's a case of I'd like to propose we accept the officer's recommendation to grant full planning permission on this application.
Well, as we haven't opened it up for debate yet, we'll
do that, and then I'll do it again then.
Then you can do it again when we do that. Are there any more questions for Lee? I hope we've all got in. Lee, I want to thank you, and thank you for answering questions on this application and the next half dozen applications, I think, that are coming in the future. So you'll all remember, you won't have to ask these questions when the next part of the 5-year plan comes in. Thank you very much, Lee. Right, I'd now open it to debate. Councillor Holt, you wanted to start the debate?
3 or 4 questions. I'm only joking. I'd like to recommend that we accept the officer's recommendation of approval to this application. I'm sorry that I've asked so many questions about a 5-year plan, but I think the questions were valid and important, especially for people in Sudbury. Thank you.
Absolutely. Perhaps Councillor Grandin, you seconding? Yeah. So we have a proposer and a seconder. One moment.
I'm gathering from the debate that there's possibly one extra condition that you talked about, which was involving vandal-proof paint or surfacing of the building. However we may phrase that, we can fashion a condition to that end. We need to speak to obviously the applicant about how it works. If you can get a particular sort that works on timber, it seems that most of those do work on hard surface, not on timber, but there are such treatments. So,
but still maintaining the aesthetic.
Yeah. one would hope it should be. It looks like there are clear solutions, so it should be possible. So I think you're asking for a vandal-proof surfacing. Wording to that effect.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Holt? Well, as you've been asking so many questions, and we've sort of been crossing the T's and dotting the I's all morning, I think it does no harm.
Trust leader would have done that anyway.
Okay, thank you. We have a proposal on the table. Councillor Carl, you have to add to the proposal, or you have another?
Can I jump in with a quick question?
To whom?
To Lee?
Well, Lee, are you willing to take one last question?
Sorry, Lee. Thank you. Asking about if there's a construction management plan in place to look at the impact, please. Sorry.
There will be. The supplier, PKL, will be providing that. It will also include engagement with Public Realm team in terms of separating and minimising any impacts on the area, and obviously during demolition of the current toilet block, there'll be a plan in place to make sure that that's done safely and that minimum necessary to ensure the park users can still access the park while that's going on. And the modular design should hopefully mean that the actual time on site is a lot less than if we were doing a full foundations and invasive works programme, so it will be provided, yeah.
Councillor Carter, there is a condition proposed on that, so that is already covered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the absence of, obviously, we're going to have a relatively short debate, and it's hard to fault the planning side of it. It all seems quite straightforward, and toilets, etc. If I was an investor in this business, I would feel that there's a high degree of jeopardy in the project that's on the table, and I think it's only fair to say in the council's current financial situation, we should be considering the sustainability of projects like this such that we aren't sort of pushing ourselves into situations where we don't seem to have an agreement with anyone to take this project on. There's quite a high degree of risk for the people that are taking the project on, and yeah, I mean, I think it calls into question the sustainability of the development.
Yeah, I just want to make two comments. One was about the toilets and the staff using the public toilets. I can confirm that from 1976 to 1984, when I worked at Bellevue Park for Babergh District Council, all our staff used the public toilets, even though we had sheds behind where the pumping shed is now, and worked all over, including at the putting shed, which is now the current cafe. So I don't see a problem with the staff from the cafe using the public toilets, because it used to happen quite happily before and worked. And the park ranger, even up until the late 90s when there was a park ranger, used the public toilets as well. The other point was that the current cafe operator, I think, is due to retire, so it may not be an issue you have to consider. And the third point is CCTV. If you bring in an operator who puts in their own equipment, I would have thought that operator would want to put their own CCTV, which is actually really cheap to do now. You could put CCTV, which would obviously improve security of the whole block. So I consider all three issues are really non-issues. And that's all I wanted to say.
A very quick one. Under the construction management plans, particularly with the demolition, I take it would be the standard conditions, no burning on site, etc. Thank you.
Councillor Holt, do you have a proposal? Do you want to add to it or subtract
Just one
from
comment, really. Just Councillor Wyman mentioned the feasibility of it, and he's absolutely right. But I think what Sudbury will gain is a new toilet block, and that is essential. It's not that funny. It's essential, I think, for the park to have that refreshed and updated. So yes, it may come at a small liability, but or a bigger liability than just the toilets, but it's definitely needed within the park.
Okay, we'll move to the vote as we have a proposer and a seconder. Can I get the area manager planning just to clarify exactly what the resolution is?
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is as per the report. The conditions are on page... what page is that? Hold on. Page 21 of your pack, with the added condition relating to a vandal-proof surface.
Have you got that?
That way, an anti-vandal surface.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress in ModGov. Thank you, Chair. That is 10 votes for, so that is unanimous.
It's a unanimous decision. I thank you all. I thank all those in attendance. I will now close the meeting by telling you the next meeting is on the 24th of January, but the area manager has informed me that we might be struggling to get any business for that one.
Nothing scheduled for that, Chair.
Nothing scheduled, but we will be. Thank you, everyone. Next meeting, 24th of January. I now formally close the meeting.